I'm Nisha Holla, and it is my immense pleasure to host two industry pioneers in science and technology on our panel on pushing the boundaries of Indian tech, women on the front lines. Today, we launch our exciting series report of the same name, Women on the Front Lines, that explores the increasing number of women at the forefront of technological innovation in the industry, in policymaking, in venture, and of course, in technological startups. Both of our guests today contributed deep and insightful pieces to this report on India's technological expansion and the inclusion of women in the same. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw is the founder and chairperson of Biocon Limited, India's premier biopharmaceutical company, and Nivriti Rai is vice president at Intel Corporation, one of the world's foremost technological companies, and is country head of Intel's Indian operations. Great to have you here with us, Nivriti. Kiran, welcome. Without further ado, let's jump into the meat of the matter, pushing the boundaries of Indian tech. So Kiran, my question to you is, your key message in the report is that incentivizing a national innovation ecosystem is crucial for India's future growth prospects. What are the enablers India must build at an ecosystem level to incentivize research, development, productization of the research, and an intellectual property pipeline?
So Nisha, thank you for having me on this, very important forum. And let me start by celebrating the Nobel Prizes awarded this year. Let's start with, of course, I'm so excited about the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, which was won by two women scientists, okay? Jennifer Doudna and, of course, Emmanuel Carpenter. And as you know, this is a very exciting event, not only for the it's not only about women scientists who have basically made these discoveries, but it's also about the fact that this is a technology that is being leveraged in amazing ways. We are looking at CRISPR-Cas9 technologies, not, in so many different ways of looking at gene editing for therapies, for correcting genetic deficiencies, and for, of course, even developing tests now. You know that the Feluda test actually that has been developed in India actually uses CRISPR-Cas9. And this is a very exciting opportunity to leverage these new technologies, which are born out of academic research, but then are leveraged because the US has this exciting ecosystem to use such technologies and take it into innovation. And as you know, so many companies have been formed out of CRISPR-Cas9 technologies in the US, Editas, CRISPR, and so many other companies. And every one of these have actually now attracted a huge amount of venture capital and are developing exciting products and technologies based on CRISPR-Cas9. Just now, think about what would happen in India. In India, unfortunately, such exciting discoveries are basically, sort of restricted to academic labs. We do not have an ecosystem to take these great innovative ideas to the market. And that's what I mean when we say we need to create that ecosystem. Today, many of our labs in the country are doing some exciting, pioneering basic research. Let me tell you, in our very city of Bengaluru, I work very often with many of the scientists at NCBS, at IISc, at JNCSAR, and all of them are actually working on some very exciting science. But the next question is, are we leveraging that science? Are we basically monetizing that science? And the answer is unfortunately no, because we don't really invest in taking that science to the market. We are very good at, investing in science to a certain extent, but we leave it there. We tell them to publish. We, basically measure them in very different ways. I think we are beginning to create incubators in many of our scientific institutions, but we need to be serious about it. And we need to invest in the science, the incubators, and in terms of taking those ideas to the market. And unless you start seriously investing in them, you will not create that virtuous cycle that you need to create that ecosystem. That's what my view is. Look at what the US does with science and look at what we don't do with science. That is the big stark difference. And I think we need to look at that. We need to really understand that if you want nonlinear growth, it will come out of new science and new scientific ideas and inventions and discoveries. And that's why it's so important to invest in science and technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's great. And so now, Nivruti, your thesis is that India's vast population and its immense appetite for digital services, as you write, presents itself as the biggest catalyst for tech adoption and data-centric innovation. What factors in the Indian tech ecosystem are enabling this transformation, and how do we utilize the momentum to think bigger going forward?
Sure. So, Nisha, a question that is very relevant at this point of time, because I'm trying to drive an AI revolution, so as to say, in the country. So when you look at technology adoption and basically invention, three things come to your mind. One is product, the other is people, the third is process. So up till now, Nisha, it has been the case where India is doing things, but it is like we are working on somebody else's dreams. We have a very large outsourcing, factory, so to say, people that are working on other people's projects. I think time now is we need to think big for ourselves. No longer we are the ones where, we are working on somebody else's dream or somebody else's vision. We have our own people, leading multinational firms. And I want to tell you one thing before I actually give you a little more story about Kiran, who's sitting right here. You must think, she's a billionaire. She lives in a palace, all of that, she has. But I tell you how inquisitive her mind is. During this pandemic, unfortunately, both she and I suffered from COVID. Her mind was continuously working. What next? What next? What research? How do I understand this? Is comorbidity a factor here? Should we look at this? Should we look at that? So she is so inquisitive and she thinks big. She's thinking, how do I solve the world's problem, with this pandemic? And her medicines, even though, you think of Biocon as an Indian company, her drugs sell all over the world from Costa Rica to United States. So she's looking at the world. And I think this is how we need to think. I will tell you one, actually it is a very scientific fact, and I'll give you an example of an animal. Dogs, often you see that when you drive your car, dogs chase that car. Where it is coming from? It is coming from a genetic memory where in the olden days, the dogs would be hunting, and anything that runs fast means he or she, that animal is trying to save their lives, and the dog runs, to basically catch the prey so that the dog can eat. Now that is the genetic memory that the dog has. Unfortunately, I feel we have a genetic memory of being told what to do. And here is what you need to do. We were ruled by British somewhere, by French somewhere, by Portuguese somewhere. I think we've got to get rid of that genetic memory that we need to be told to do this. So I want the hunger in the women like Kiran. She doesn't really have to drive those researches, but she does. And therefore I look at, how can I create that hunger in the women? I want to tell you a very sad statistic that I very recently found out. And I think Kiran, you, myself, all the women have to change that. The statistic I learned, Nisha, it was such a massive gender inequality. It said that if you look at the number of donors, the living donors of organs, I'm not talking about the declared circulatory dead organs. I'm talking about living people who sign up for organ donations. How many people do that? 80% of those organ donors are women. 80 of the 100% that the country gets. But now you want to know how many are the receivers who are women? 20%. What does it tell you? That our life
exact
is one
opposite.
Exactly. One, we have to change that. We are very precious. We have ideas, from revolt of 1857, post that there was Anandi Bai Joshi, was the first woman who did her medical study. We have women like that. We have like women like Kiran. We have women like Indra Nui. We have women like Vinita Bali. We have women like Lata Reddy. They're all my role models. Those are the women we need to look at and bring out the smart women, give them the hunger, make them feel precious, have them file IPs. You know, Kiran talked about how important IPs. I tell you that while China is still behind in number of people filing IPs, it still creates a very fantastic winning story that 40% of the IPs are filed, international IPs are filed by women, the patents. I think we are as smart.
Absolutely.
So what we need to do, people like ourselves need to find those women and bring them up to visibility. You know, I thank Kiran. She's helped me so much in growing to the level I am, where I have become visible. I have a voice now. We need to find women who can be sponsors, mentors, and push them to drive these innovations, because while India is leading in number of STEM graduates, we have 43% of our people graduating STEM are women. But if you look at the employment, it's like 15%. So they're also, 43 going down to 15, 80 going down to 20 in terms of organs. So there's a lot of change we have to make, whether it is helping them with filing innovations, giving them venture funding for starting their own companies, and giving them the hunger to think big. So that's what I would like to say.
Nivruti, you're so right. Okay. I think it's very important for us to make sure that women find their voice, women find their strength, and women find their minds. You know, basically, I think you and I are, people who know what we are capable of doing. We are very confident, we are very self-assured, and we are impatient to bring about change. But I think other women need to feel like what we do, because we never really look at ourselves with a gender bias. You know what I mean? We believe that we are scientists, we are technologists, we can actually compete with anybody, because we believe, and I firmly believe, that science and technology should be gender agnostic. Why do we believe that men have to be better than women in science and technology? It's a complete myth. And I think the Nobel Prizes show this to us. And I think what we also have to understand is, yes, there's a lot of unfair bias, because a lot of the jury are always men. Yes. The VCs are always men. And, we have a natural disadvantage because we are women. But I think the world can't ignore us anymore. Because I think, science and technology and innovation actually can't hide, those kind of differences anymore.
Absolutely. I had a massive power surge here, so I had to drop off for a second, but I'm back now. So, just an interesting statistic there to build on what both of you all have been saying. Last year in 2018-19, for the first time, the gross enrollment ratio of women in higher education exceeded that of men, 26.4 versus 26.3. Women's literacy rates are also steadily increasing, especially after the economic liberalization in 1991. We were 43% then, and now we've crossed 70%. So Indian women, I think, are rising with very clear aspirations. We've all seen that. And now, but they don't have congruent employment prospects. So how do we harness this massive untapped potential? How do we set up these pipelines for them to go from education into employment? How do we set up new labs? How do we onboard them onto that? That's the pertinent question, right?
So Nisha, I mean, I face this kind of an issue every day, and I'm sure Nivruti does it as well in our own organizations. We all have a very strong focus on gender inclusion. And I think all of us make that extra effort to make sure that we have an inclusive process for women. And I think in terms of what we are doing at our workplaces, I think we are making sure that a lot of the women have those opportunities to get in at the base level. And we
That's
are
excellent.
seeing, even in our own research labs, we have a large number of women scientists. But then there is
Yes.
the filtration process that unfortunately sees a lot of women still falling off.
Mm-hmm.
We need to fix that, because I, for one, believe that women must stick to their career paths. It is not a hobby. It is not a
Yes.
fallback option for them. They must look at it as a serious career, which is
Yes.
all about economic independence and economic growth for them. Um, I think that thinking has to change in society, especially, because I
Absolutely.
find that the societal thinking about women as economic entities is still trapped in the old ways of thinking about what women should do and shouldn't do. And I think slowly it will get better. But even today, I want it to be a celebration when a girl child is born to a less privileged family.
Absolutely.
See, it is still not there. The
Absolutely.
mindset is ladka hua, are ladki hui. That has to change. I mean, I see it
Yes.
in my own staff. When I see my drivers or somebody else getting a daughter or a son, I still see the joy on their faces when they have a son. And not, they're happy, but they're not joyful when they get a daughter. And until they feel as
Right.
excited about getting a daughter, I think our society will not change. So that is the big change we need to see. And if you see that parents are treating their sons and daughters on an equal keel, then you will see the big difference. If they're
Yes.
as keen for their daughters to get a good job as their sons are, then I think you will see the difference. And I think it is slowly happening. I think what is happening is very important. It's not from the parents, it's from the
It
girls.
is.
And I think that is very important.
Yes. This
I'm
higher
sorry,
education trend, because women are saying, I want to go to college. Yes, women are saying, I want to go to college. And then they start looking at women working in Biocon or Intel, and they say, okay, now I want to go work in these companies, right? So I'm sure Nivriti is also seeing this trend.
Absolutely. So I completely agree with Kiran that, and it's not just in India, Nisha. I'll give you a story of,
Yes.
I was in US and I met a nurse. And, she started talking to me, how did you become an engineer? What are you doing? Then she told me a story. And this was, several 40 years back, because she must be a 40-plus-year-old woman. She said, when she was born, her father would always think a doctor for the son and at most a nurse for the woman. So, there
Right.
is education that needs to happen at all levels. And, human beings are selfish. We can understand. So in cases where people's economic condition is not that good, they think, oh, my son is going to bring me money, but the daughter, I have to spend money to marry her, and things like that. But Nisha, this analysis has been done by many people, and I often try to remember in the zeros the exact number I remember is something like a 770-ish billion, but think of it like a trillion. Women, if brought to the work and given equal amount of pay, then India will see at least 770 billion, and I'm going to make it easy, $1 trillion in the GDP added.
Absolutely.
And what we're talking
Absolutely.
about, 1 trillion is going to come from the digitization and all of that technology adoption. And here you're leaving the 1 trillion on the table. So we need to announce that. We need to announce to everybody that that's what women are capable of. And very much like, Kiran said that, some of the employees still feel so happy, a boy. You can understand it in many different ways. One is, this parents are thinking nurse and doctor. The organ donors are more women, but getting fewer. So the value of women has to increase. And I fully agree with Kiran that it is increasing, because my children don't think like that. I see my son seek me out as much as he seeks his dad out. and he values my opinion as much as he values his father's opinion. And the other thing that is going to help us, Nisha, think of artificial intelligence and think of
Absolutely.
industrial robotics. You know, the only job, and I'm fully agreeing with Kiran, I don't feel I can not do anything except when it comes to like lifting weights. I know that I'm
Physical
physically
labor.
ready to pick up, 100 kilogram weight easily. So what is happening with AI and industrial robotics? Even that is going to create a level playing field. Nobody will be lifting weights. They will be, programming or pushing buttons, etc. So that is the advantage that we will see. And I will tell you one more story that I view both as glass half full and half empty. In the pandemic, what has happened, Nisha? Most of us are working from home who can,
Yes.
who don't need the labs, who don't need to mix, compounds, or who don't need to measure certain electrical voltage, are working from home. We have laptops, we have connectivity. So what that will do is, I'm really hoping and praying that that will enable people to see my work more than my face, and what I do as a result. And it might help, and I'm beginning to see it's helping. It might help even more the gender bias, because what people will see is the work, not somebody who's walking with the colorful clothes, or somebody walking with something else. So I really feel technology, whether it is 5G, whether it is AI, whether it is industrial robotics, we call it industry 4.0, is going to help us. And so technology is one aspect of it, and our own thinking is another one. I will share a doha from Kabir. We have to overcome that. I told you about the genetic memory. The other thing is in your own heart. The doha says, man ke hare sada. If in your heart, in your man, you feel you will lose, you will forever lose. Man ke jeete, sada jeete. So it is all in your mind. If you feel that I will win, I will become a aeronautical engineer, or I'll become a rocket scientist, I will.
Right.
Feel that, no, I'm only good as a nurse, then you will limit yourself to that. So we as women who have a voice need to reach out, speak this, so we can make the man ke jeete jeet in the women, and have them dream big, have
Absolutely.
them aspire to be a Kiran or an Indra Nui or a Vinita Bali, or these such inspiring women who have
Absolutely.
lived a life of legacy.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the Mars mission, how happy I was to see ISRO and DRDO, so many women
Those
celebrating.
so many women. Yes. Yes.
And the Leslie Thomas.
We are in a knowledge economy. And, they've
Absolutely.
always used that, example of saying it's brain and not brawn that actually is required for the knowledge economy. And it is gender agnostic. So I think, as they say, heavy lifting is for men, but heavy thinking can be for women.
Absolutely. And now coming to the knowledge economy, right? India's famed demographic dividend is going through the economy right now, and our fertility rates are dropping. So it's never a better time to train our young population to lean into the knowledge economy, right? Now, Kiran, you come from a deep science background, and Nivruti comes from a frontier technology perspective. You're looking at AI, ML, and all these frontier technologies. How do we ensure that the skill sets required for the knowledge economy and frontier technologies and deep science that are so important for economic growth, how do we ensure that our young population gets these skills so that they can compete with scientists in the US, scientists in China? We have to be able to change our education system, our skilling system. We start vocational training programs. So what are your ideas on this? Kiran, I'll start with you.
So the first thing is, you cannot compartmentalize knowledge. It's not about separating science from information technology and compute.
Yes.
When you talk about science, it's not just biological sciences and computer science in two buckets. It is a convergence taking place. Today,
absolutely,
you cannot do biological sciences without the use of computer science, okay, computational science. And today I'm actually very, very interested in what's happening at an institute like MIT. You know, I'm on the board of trustees,
Yes.
and I know that on the board of MIT Corporation. And of course, it's a very exciting place to be because you can see the confluence of technologies at a place like MIT, which has always boasted about a multidisciplinary approach to knowledge creation and knowledge learning. And I think that's what it's about. I think we must understand that young people today must be educated differently. We cannot compartmentalize their knowledge. It's about understanding how to merge knowledge, how to blur boundaries, how to converge technologies and knowledge and science in a way that allows people to think very differently.
Yes.
And I think in our own case, like look at, even if you look at CRISPR-Cas9, right? You don't know, you will never be able to edit the genome without using informatics and genomics, which requires very high levels of computational skills to understand which part of that genome needs to be edited and where. You cannot do it without those kind of, converging technologies.
Absolutely.
So I think today the world is very different. The way we go about, even today, the way AI is used, the way data analytics is used, the way we use computer science is so very different, because you can accelerate processes, you can do parallel processing, you can do things which you couldn't do before. And if you only think about science in a very insular way, you will miss out on all these other opportunities. That's what we need to do in our country. The way we train young people has to be very different, has to make sure that they have an understanding of how science works, how multidisciplinary science works, and how do you combine it all. So that's really the big opportunity we have. And I think many new universities are looking at this approach, which is very, very important. And I think the new education policy is also recognizing the importance of doing this. And we need to make sure we know how to deliver on this policy without having opinionated kind of policy making that detracts from this. You know what I mean? So I think we need to make sure that we make the most of what is now available to us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Nivruti, how about yourself?
Look at even in the pandemic, the way we are using technology.
Yes.
It is not just, today I'm saying to a lot of people, it is really crazy that the cost of an RT-PCR test is much more than what we are projecting the vaccine to cost.
Yes.
Okay? And therefore, there is a challenge out there to say, how do we reduce the cost of testing? And of course, even the Feluda test has to focus on affordability. It is not just about using a technology for a different reason, but it's about making sure that you constantly focus on affordable access. Because in a country like ours, we need to make sure that testing is the cheapest in the world. And we need to create platforms, which is what will give you the rapid response to a pandemic, in whether it is the testing response, whether it is the therapeutic response, whether it is the vaccine response. You need really these kind of approaches to even deal with a pandemic. This pandemic preparedness is about platform technologies. How fast can you plug and play?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nivruti, what are your thoughts on how to inculcate skills and education for frontier technologies in India today?
Sure. So one difference, let me tell you, since I have studied in both India and US, one difference that I saw, even from the time when I went to undergrad and grad school, US focuses a lot on the application of technology. So let's, I'm going to give you one example of complex algebra is something I took where, you are given a very complex equation and you are asked to understand the shape of that equation.
Right.
It will have, square term, cube term, linear term, maybe fifth root term and all that. So in India, what, the way we teach is we make sure that the person can solve this equation.
Yes.
But I never saw the shape of that equation. Once you see the shape of that equation, you can say, oh yeah, I can take a picture of the black hole like this because that's the equation's shape. So, you
Right.
get understanding of application. I'm not saying solving the equation is not important, but what is also important is the application of technology. I learned differential equation, integrals, complex algebra, all of the mathematical programming, but where do I use it? It just looked like, grades and over. And in US, I learned, oh my gosh, that's how I use mathematical programming, and that's how actuaries use it. So I started looking at applications. So I feel we have to do somewhat of that. Teach technology, but also teach application. I also feel some of the newer technologies, honestly, Nisha, 10% of the AI, let me just rephrase. 60 to 70% of CEOs talk about AI,
Right.
and only 10% use it. Because one, they don't know the application and it's being used as a buzzword.
Yes.
So what we have to do is we have to reach out to the children early and train them on AI, basic AI, get them to do assignments to build AI projects.
Absolutely.
Give them the framework, give them the tool. Don't just let them have a regression equation and build a training model. Give them a training model, give them an inferencing model, have them use it. So we have to get the out of the new technology. What is quantum physics? What will quantum physics? So I have heard about quantum physics for a very long time. But I assure you, very few people can tell you what is the benefit as an end user we can give to Kiran.
Yes.
So those are the kind of education that we have to teach our children. And me as Intel, we really are working hard on this. Last year, we taught 100,000 kids, 8th through 12th, AI, and government as well, private schools.
Wonderful.
So they should not fear. We're trying to reach government officers also that think AI, think what potential you can unleash. So all of those kind of things are very necessary. So application of technology, we should teach, not just to kids, even to graduates and PhDs. And then
absolutely
expose them to new technologies and where can they be used. So they start thinking early on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're reaching the end of the panel. I have one question for both of you all. Now, Kiran, what are some of the exciting things that you all are pursuing at Biocon? And how do you see the effects? Life sciences is such an important feature for any economy, including India with its 1.4 billion population. So what are some of the things that are getting you excited about life sciences right now? And what are you pursuing at Biocon towards this?
So, in recent times, I've been very fascinated with what immunology has to offer, because we now know that many, diseases, including infectious disease, of course, is a problem with your immune system, right? And oncology is one such area where we've understood that cancer is actually the result of an immune failure, okay? Because it's the failure of your immune system to recognize a cancer cell that actually causes cancer. Because normally a cancer cell should be identified as something abnormal and therefore your body should actually attack it and get rid of it. But there are other mechanisms in your immune system which fools the immune system and therefore it allows us to keep replicating. Now, today I think I'm very fascinated with immuno-oncology in many ways. And, we've got a new company called Bicara Therapeutics, which is actually developing bispecific antibodies to deal with the immune system in very very ways, to basically make sure that the body doesn't remain getting fooled by the immune, by these cancer cells. So I think that's a very fascinating field which I'm really getting involved in, and I'm learning so much about immunology because of COVID as well.
Yes.
We have a drug that is also looking at how to fix the immune system, which is causing so much harm to COVID patients because of, again, an abnormal response of the body to the COVID virus. In addition to that, as you know, I've recently started a CAR-T company called Immunil, and that is now looking at very interesting ways of dealing with life-threatening cancers, especially blood cancers, where we are actually engineering the cells so that it can kill the cancers in blood cancers like leukemias and lymphomas.
That's awesome.
All this is very, very fascinating new technology. And all of this uses multiple sciences, multiple technologies to deal with these kind of issues. You cannot do without computer science, you cannot do without genomics, and you cannot do without biological sciences, and you
without semiconductors.
Technology. So I think this is a perfect storm that we are in, where so many of these scientific understandings, so many technologies are coming together to solve some of the biggest unmet challenges that human beings are facing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Nivriti, in closing, same question to you. Any growing economy, especially India, needs all these frontier technologies. We've spoken about AI, there's machine learning, quantum, cybersecurity, a whole host. What are some of the exciting things you all are doing at Intel that gets you excited, when you go into work every day? Well, not now because of COVID, you're not going into work every day, but yes.
We're working, from wherever.
Exactly.
So Nisha, two things that I want to tell you. One is in the space of technology, and the other is in the space of the social sector. So in the space of technology, what excites me is, like Kiran said, let me give you some numbers so you can get an understanding of what really, compute can enable her to do.
Right.
Just an example, in the year 2000, Nisha, 1 teraflops. Tera means 1 trillion operations, floating point operation. Floating point means if the number has, decimals in it.
Yeah.
So 1 teraflop of operations, meaning 1 trillion operations, in the year 2000 costed $50 million, $50 million. Okay.
Wow.
Let me tell you today what it costs. 8 teraflops cost $600. So 8 times more, $600. And in your iPhone, if you have, one of the newer ones, you have 5 teraflops already. And why is this number 8 important? This number 8 is important because for an autonomous vehicle, in India, I'm looking at collision avoidance, but autonomous vehicle will need 8 teraflops like compute capability. Imagine. And back then we would, so convergence of technology is happening, which is enabling, biopharmaceutical company like Biocon to do genomic study. We need several teraflops operations so we can do genomic study and enable, very many applications. So she mentioned perfect storm. The perfect storm is happening because convergence of technology is happening. Battery cost has gone down 95%. I'm talking about lithium ion batteries, which are, watches and this and that, 95% in the last 5 years.
That's fantastic.
So things have become...
Even sequencing a full genome has gone down from $1 million to $100, so it's the same. It's the computer.
Yes. So we can do a lot. So we are partnering with CSIR on this CRISPR-Cas9 studies. We are looking at patient characterization. So, actual personalization of treatment, some of it which Kiran mentioned. Tuberculosis has so many different variations, but we treat everybody similar with tuberculosis, and interactions you don't study. We have so many, different interactions of our DNA with the disease and the medicine. Now the computer is letting you do it. So we are continuing to push on the computing technology, the social, and then, I also mentioned quantum. Just to give you one example, what will quantum do? 900 miles away people can get information instantly, because what quantum physics does, entangles 2 photons, makes their characteristics same. One photon is here, the other photon is 900 miles away, meaning transfer of information instant. Imagine somebody could be sitting in Sloan Kettering and doing a surgery on a Bangalore person. That is the kind of thing, we will be enabling with quantum. So quantum is happening. Computer, the computer today does not work exactly like brain. We try to emulate, but we are working on something which is called neuromorphic core, meaning that is in architecture terms, it's called non-von Neumann architecture, but it will work like the human brain. So that excites me, new technology, and thinking the application of it in the social sectors excites me even more.
And
the
in
second
fact,
thing I want to tell you,
I just want to add to what Nivruti said. I think the understanding of the human metabolism, the human brain is just so fascinating, because I can tell you that the way the immune response, the immune system responds to anything. Can you imagine the processing that's happening in your body to respond instant, sort of a trillionth of a second it is taking to respond in a certain way. Just like you mentioned, your neurological responses. I mean, it is amazing what your human body can do.
Absolutely.
And that's why a lot of studies on the human body are giving such wonderful answers.
I want to finish.
Technology.
Absolutely. Please go ahead, Nivruti.
Okay, we started a program called Being Wise, and WISE stands for Women Innovators, Social Leaders, and Entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And we started this program in 2017 in the Global Entrepreneurial Summit in Hyderabad, when Ivanka Trump had also come, and Prime Minister Modi was there, and we had this whole, entrepreneurial drive. So we announced this, and I'm really happy to tell you that we have now a consortium of many industries working together to drive innovation, invention through women, to drive social leadership as well as entrepreneurship. So partnering with VCs to enable more funding to women related or women owned startups. The other thing very interesting in this is we build, which is called Being Wiser. R is just, pun intended, but R stands for rating. And what we have built is, actually we filed, the guy who built this has filed a patent for this. He's built a framework which tells, if you are doing X, Y, Z for your women employee, your rating is, A, B, or C, silver, gold, bronze, platinum. And we are working through multiple companies. We are working with government, and Kiran was one of the founding members. And I'm really happy to tell you that we've made significant progress in this. We've raised money. We've created a Section 8 company. We will be hiring people who will be running this. It will no longer be Intel driven. It will be industry driven. Mm-hmm. And the goal is just advancement of women, all kinds of women. Whether it includes training, the labor women that you see working for building, carrying cement on their heads, we are trying to train them to do data classification or data contextualization for AI. We just give them a simple machine and we say, if you see a red spot, press this. If you see a green spot, press this. So you're making it simple such that when, AI revolution is happening, they don't lose their jobs. They can be reskilled. Because AI in a solution, that real sense AI is only 15%. So my goal is to do my best in, trying to help women in the different areas, whether it is scientific or whether it is, labor or social entrepreneurship or, getting them VC funding. So I'm really
Nivruti, I'm also now getting involved in healthcare, where I believe that ASHA workers should be digitally educated on a career path that actually makes them really frontline, not just what they're doing today, but they can actually take healthcare to the next level through digital technologies. That's what we need to do. And my dream is to see if ASHA workers could actually play a leadership role at primary health centers, where they could replace the current need for a doctor. I think that's the way you have to, digitally educate them so that they can actually collect data, understand data, deploy data, and interpret data. So once you put them on that kind of a career path, you can actually get them to manage primary health centers and really disrupt the whole healthcare system in terms of what we need to do to reimagine India's healthcare system.
Absolutely. Very inspiring, very inspirational. And unfortunately, we're at the end of our time. I always enjoy talking to both of you all about technology, women, and everything in between. As an engineer and computational physicist, this was a dream to have this discussion with both of you on the panel. Thank you so much. I'm sure all of our listeners have learned a lot from both of you. Thank you very much for being part of ORF Sci-Fi Conference. Thanks, Kiran. Thanks, Nivriti.
Thanks, Nisha.
Thanks,
Thank
Nisha.
you.